So this is our SOM 122 final project. It's business in the time of a pandemic. My name is Dominic Brancoli.
I'm Jared Edsel.
I'm Luz Pepperjack.
And I'm Nick Monaco.
The past 10 months have been like a scene right out of a sci-fi horror movie. As we've all experienced, COVID-19 has changed all of our lives and the world around us today. While in some areas, this change isn't as easily pinpointed, in others, such as the business world, this change is apparent. Specifically, in our presentation, we will be covering how the pandemic has affected globalization, supply and demand, as well as we will be analyzing shifts in certain industries through the past model.
All right, so our first topic is globalization. So globalization is the process by which businesses or organizations develop international influence or start operating on an international scale. So as we all know, COVID-19 did close down the borders and travel just hit an extreme low. And so as the World Trade Organization forecasted, is that the virus would show a 9.2% decline in the volume of merchandise. So this means that there was a major downfall in the quantity of goods being traded. So this is a big part of the economic downfall because a lot of companies weren't able to produce enough products and generate enough revenue for their company. So this means a lot of unemployment, people being laid off and fired. So this decline in trade heavily impacted globalization for many different industries. And so here are just a few different sectors of the impact that COVID-19 had on globalization. So the international trade volume, as we can see, had a huge uptrend for the past 40 years. And then obviously there's a downfall. And once again, with the investment flows, even though it is quite up and down, we still do see an uptrend and then a large downfall from the pandemic. And then the biggest one was international travel. So over the past 40 years, it has increased greatly, as we can see, and then almost a complete drop down to zero. So,
Due to the COVID pandemic, many sectors of the market have experienced a higher demand for goods and services, one including technology. To prevent the spread of the virus, many schools and businesses have decided to work remotely, causing an increase of 20% of workers who work remotely, and an increase of 13% of workers who split the work remotely and on-site. Though there have been many businesses that have been forced to shut down and many people to lose their jobs. Though there has been a projected increase of U.S. sales of technologies and communications by an increase of 3.5 from 2020 to 2021. Many companies are transitioning their workforce to full-time. A survey showed that 70% of business leaders are converting 5% of their workforce to permanent remote positions. Though another sector of the market that instead of experiencing higher demand have experienced a decrease of demand is the vehicle sector. They have experienced a decrease of 20%. And for new vehicles and for used vehicles have experienced a 10%, but many customers have decided to buy used cars as there is a shortage of new vehicle inventory. This chart shows the forecast for technologies and services as it is established for 2020. There will be a steady increase for the forecast of total sales as the years go by.
Similarly to how COVID shutdowns have taken people from in-person activities to online activities, increasing the demand for technology, the travel sector has been experiencing the opposite effect. As we all know, nobody feels comfortable traveling by plane or cruise line anymore because they feel unsafe. Furthermore, people are more comfortable staying in their homes as opposed to traveling elsewhere, even if their current area is spiking with COVID-19 cases. This is the social effect of pest. The political effect is that because borders are closing, cargo ships and both passenger ships and cargo ships are both being limited as to where they can travel to and if they can go in and out of certain countries. In terms of the economic effect, it is predicted that airlines have lost an estimated amount of at least $250 billion since the start of the pandemic, and stocks such as American Airlines, Spirit Airlines, Carnival Cruise Lines, and Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines are still not even close to rebounding from their pre-COVID levels. Lastly, as the effects of COVID start to hopefully ease, airlines and cruise lines will continue to use technological information to predict and analyze customer sentiment, examine their cash flow, and hopefully start the rebounding process from COVID. And on this chart here, we can see this is the number of people in the past year or so that have been screened at TSA checkpoints. The blue line is the normal line, and then the red line is the percent change compared to 1 year ago after COVID-19. So we can see the difference between the blue and the red line is the amount of people that have, or the amount of less people that have been getting screened at TSA checkpoints, which just shows the decrease in people who have been traveling since COVID-19.
As we know, since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, many different industries have felt the economic impact of the virus. This is especially true in the retail industry. Since many big retail stores rely on in-person shopping companies, such as Steinmart, they had to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in August. Steinmart had been struggling to flip a profit since 2015. The pandemic only made this worse by cutting their sales in half, raising their debt to about $200 million. The stimulus check wasn't even enough to influence customers to go into stores and make more purchases. Well, this was also because, depending on the state you lived in, COVID-19 rules for going into stores were different. To potentially swing the life of the company back into action, the company is also considering strategic alternatives, including the sale of its website and its intellectual properties. Other iconic retail stores have gone bankrupt. This includes CEC Entertainment, who owns Chuck E. Cheese's, Lord & Taylor, GNC, J.C. Penney, and Guitar Center. Chapter 11 bankruptcy is when the debtor usually proposes a plan of reorganization to keep its business alive and pay creditors over time. Chapter 11 bankruptcy has been a common occurrence in the retail industry since the pandemic. COVID-19 did not start what experts are calling the retail apocalypse, as consumers were leaning towards online retailers even before the pandemic, but it certainly accelerated this downfall, taking out some big named retailers. As we can see in this chart, all the Steinmart locations that closed, which was announced on August 13th, 2020, at the height of the pandemic. And as you can see, 279 store locations are closing, which is a huge hit to Steinmart. Conclusions and key takeaways. The coronavirus outbreak of 2020 is like no other event that our country has seen. It is the main factor in our most recent economic recession. Globalization and supply and demand are probably the most impacted economic factors from the coronavirus. With the good news of a potential vaccine being manufactured, an economic rebound is hopefully on the horizon.
All right, and here are some of the major sources we used throughout our project. Thank you.